So just background. So I've been with ERA for, like I said, 19 years. And within ERA in the UK, there's probably about 200 consultants who come from all different walks of life with expertise in their relative, the various backgrounds they bring. So that could be fuel, it could be distribution, it could be export, it could be insurance. They've all got an accumulation of knowledge in their particular areas, and that knowledge and the leverage we've got as a consultancy, which is about 740 million pounds of review in the UK, helps us to achieve what we can for our clients. The ERA consultancy is a cost and purchase management consultancy, and whilst we operate in the UK, we also operate in 26 other countries, and across all of those we are finding there's a lot more integration with companies that operate on a pan-European basis. In particular, recent survey kind of giving an indication here of that most companies feel that some of those costs need looking at, and they necessarily haven't got them under control. Most really, a lot of companies chase profit instead of turning that on its head and looking at what their cost base is and how they can reduce that. Hopefully, I don't want to do that because that's a salesy bit, but we deal with over 40 indirect costs on a kind of a no savings, no fee basis. A couple of things I think is important to hear, and I'm going to go into a little bit of detail here, is if we started, my pointer is showing, on the top of this diagram, roughly at the 11 o'clock position, we've got suppliers give similar pricing to similar clients and customers. That is definitely not true. We uncover it all of the time. And because we're exposed to so many different companies, so many different industry sectors, so many things, there really is always room for price negotiations with your incumbent supplier. The other thing that needs to bear in mind that if you've been with an incumbent supplier for a long time, don't always think because you've got a good relationship that translates to having pricing is being put forward in your best interests. In many ways, we find we are at odds. A supplier is there to make money for the company. We are there to ensure you pay a fair price for the goods and service you receive. And the two, therefore, you get that, opposite pull of what we're trying to do. Coming round to the 9 o'clock position, where we've got national buying agreements are always better than local or regional. Again, that is far from true. What you find there is that a national buying agreement has to take account and consideration of the volume of a particular product or the cost of a particular service in a broad brush approach across many hospitals, many care centres, many homes, etc. And therefore, whilst it might be particularly beneficial for one of those entities, it won't be beneficial for others. And having that local relationship allows you to have greater control of that spend, and also to ensure it suits your needs, because every type of satellite unit within an organization is slightly different. And so if you are in a national buying agreement, I would look at it, take it at face value. You need to analyze it and go out to market and potentially see if you could do better, if you're allowed, coming out of that national agreement. By way of contrast, one of my clients is GE Power Conversion, a very big corporate entity. It's a division of an even bigger general company, General Electric. And we've already uncovered, just by way of example, they have a national, international, corporate mobile phone contract. We have just looked at that and assessed it and found them 60% saving on mobile phones. That money, as far as the guys like you are, the field that you guys operate in, I think you'll agree could be better used elsewhere in patient care, improving patient care, new facilities, new bits and pieces around the home, maintenance, whatever it may be. And that's why I think it's important for me to try and reach out and do this for you. Excuse me 1 minute. Sorry, I've got work being done on the house. Apologies. So yeah, and to start this process of assessing where you are, if we go to 3 o'clock on this diagram, we've got benchmarking data. That's something you guys need to do, and you need to bring that down to a particular service you're using. I'll use waste as an example. So you need to understand what waste services you've currently got, what their unit cost is, what does good look like, and you can only really determine that by going out to market once you've got that data together. So you need to assess the size of bin, the waste stream you're using, the frequency of lifts. Does the operator get back to you, or waste supply get back to you if they've missed a service? Is there good communication? Are they quick to follow up on a missed service? All of those things form part of the benchmarking exercise. So you're analysing not only the unit cost, you're also analysing the service you get from them. And don't be afraid once you've got the information, and it needs to be real and factual of what you're looking at, to then step back and say, does that really meet our needs? And if we were to tweak it, if we had a clean sheet of paper and we were going to market, what things would we like to see improved upon? And that's something that we do. So we would put a service level together, service level document, and we'd go back to the client and we'd say, on our understanding of speaking to your suppliers and speaking to your stakeholders, this is the current situation in your service levels and what you're getting. However, also speaking to other stakeholders, if they could get improvements, they would like to see A, B, C, D. It could be financial, it could be communication, it could be service, it could be more frequent meet, whatever it happens to be. Then if we come down to the 4 o'clock position where we have staff and management here, with the best will in the world, nearly every FD I speak to or financial controller, there are things that are at the back of their mind that they want to investigate and haven't got time to investigate. They haven't got the resource necessarily to do what we need to do in terms of getting the benchmark information together. Invariably, they're short on resources, and invariably they're short on time. They're too busy fighting fires. So you have to weigh up whether you can pull that resource together, or whether external resource coming in to do that for you and working with you as part of your procurement team might be a quicker way of achieving what you want to achieve. And by way of factual information, approximately 60% of, let's call it, cost reduction exercises within a company or within a hospital or with a trust fail. They start off with a lot of vigor and enthusiasm, and then they get to a certain point and then it begins to wane and they lose traction and never quite comes to fruition. The other important thing to remember here is that you must continue to audit the supplier's performance and their pricing to ensure what they've said they're going to do as part of your tender process is being delivered. And because we do audits to ensure that is the case in terms of service problems or pricing, but because the supplier is aware that we're constantly auditing and constantly look at them, you find that they know they're being held to account, and they know that we are watching, and they know they need to deliver to maintain or to continue to service this contract. Another element, I'm going to jump across to about the 4 o'clock position, where you've got, because I have experience in procurement in one area of my business, then all areas are well covered. Hopefully you'll know from experience that's not the case. And hopefully you'll know from experience that you may find that an individual is lumped with a group of cost categories or cost areas to look at and become responsible for, where they really don't have, they might have procurement expertise, but they don't have expertise in the particular field. And the two, are miles apart in terms of how that translates in terms of analysis, how that translates in putting a tender document together, how that translates into knowing the marketplace and what is happening, how that translates into new developments. So whilst this individual may do this every 2 or 3 years on behalf of a company or organization, we're almost doing it weekly, in many cases more than once a week, depending on the clients we've got. I want to stop there and just open this up and see if anything I've said thus far touches any points, touches points with any individuals listening. And if you have any questions about anything you're currently doing or want to do that I could answer.
Glenn, could I ask a question? It's Simon. A lot of what you described sounds really straightforward if a contract is at the end of its tenure. And I just wondered if you'd give an example of where you have been able to extract better value, lower prices, for example, where a contract is perhaps midway through its term.
Yeah, midway through its term, we have had success on that, but I would also say it's not guaranteed, because at the end of the day, a contract is a contract, and legally it is binding, even more so in commercial terms. But what we can do is when we do go mid-contract is that we would look at it and assess what's going on, and we effectively carry out a what we call a situation report, which is effectively the benchmarking exercise. And we could say to the client, you've got 2 options here. You could either wait until the contract ends, but we would come in probably 4 months before contract end date to start preparing. Or if you wish, we can try and see what we can do mid-term. Both would end up being the same kind of process. We would do the situation report, and we may well go out to market to see what the market is doing and how it looks. Then what you would do is come back to your incumbent supplier in the nicest possible way to explain you're going through this review process. We've had a look at the market out there, and this is what we've come back with. Now, the client really likes working with you. You've got a really strong relationship, and we'd like that to continue. But given what we found now, would you be prepared to have a look at the contract mid-term and adjust it to, to be a bit more lenient towards what we found out that's happening in the market? Now, they may or may not do that, but morally, you're placing pressure on them. And morally, you could also say to them, look, if you could do something now, it would certainly look very favourable when we come to the end of your contract as to how we proceed from there. So I suppose you're playing the guilt card to a degree to see how they would react and what they could do to help you in the interim. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's really helpful. No, it's interesting. I mean, I imagine Suppliers probably want to come back to you and say, well, if you extend the length of the contract, then we can do something, and you enter into a bit of a negotiation that way. But
yeah, there is always a nothing set in concrete, Simon, as you alluded to, and there is that possibility. Yes, well, we could do that, but like you say, we would want an extension of contract. I wouldn't necessarily jump on board with that straight away, because again, you would need to assess what they're going to offer. And if they are wanting an extension of contract or a renewed contract, then I would be playing a little bit more hardball in terms of saying, well, you know, we will do a full tender then if you want to re-engage on a new contract, because what we're looking for you to do partway through contract is move towards changing those pricing to show that you value your relationship with the clients. So do you know what I mean? There's kind of two aspects of it. One, if you want a new contract, we'll do a full-blown tender and see how you get on with that. Or two, meet us halfway and see what we could do mid-contract. And really, we would always discuss those options with the clients to sort of say, well, how do you feel about this and how does it sit? Because if they want to move forward with a new contract and they're offering pricing X, we know we can get pricing Y with this and this supplier. So how would you like to move forward with this?
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, any other questions?
I've just put a note in. I don't know what you think about this, Glenn, but I'll often look at the service level agreement midway through a contract just to be certain that actually it's being honoured in full. It's amazing how many of them, you know, small details are not being dealt with properly, and it's not necessarily grounds for ripping up the contract, but it's certainly grounds for re-engaging with the supplier.
Yeah, and that's where the ongoing service element of what I suggest to you, that ongoing auditing and holding suppliers to account, ensures that that service level is maintained. Another example, this was photocopiers, a fairly big company. It was GE actually, as it happens, another big company. We were looking at the service level agreements and what have you, and within that agreement was a statement saying that if the usage profile was below X, then the client would be due Y. The client is due a £40,000 rebate that they had no idea they were due. And that's by looking through and assessing those service level agreements and contracts to ensure the supplier is delivering what they said they're going to do. Here you see some of the reasons why headline pricing to draw you into a contract or new contract can lead to the supplier over time clawing back the margin they've sacrificed to entice you into the contract. And these are some of the things that we will identify routinely when we do this exercise with clients. I'm not going to do a sales pitch. This is not the idea of this. There's some of the clients we've worked with. You can see it's quite a big profile of who we've done. Don't need to get that. So these are some areas that we can look at for companies and clients. We do a lot of work with the healthcare sector. I'm currently working with CareTech at the moment, a social, well, a fairly big organisation who deal with, I think it's mental health and head injuries, both in a hospital basis and, excuse my terminology, but outsourced living, whatever the correct term is. Again, some of the other companies that we've worked with, that's not really what I want to do. So if you wanted to do it on a self-help basis in terms of following what we do, then this is the gist of it. So situation report is effectively your benchmarking. You're analysing what is going on in your business today, what's good, what's bad, what it costs you, and what suppliers are you using. Once you've got that and you've had a roundtable discussion with your stakeholders, you would then be looking to put a tender document together. We, as a matter of course, always include your incumbent suppliers unless you tell us you don't want to. And we'd also say to a client, and we're also thinking of bringing in these suppliers. Are you okay with that, to see what they can offer? And we would also ask the client if they have any suppliers that have approached them or through a network that they would like us to include in this exercise. So 3 sources of suppliers coming in. We write the tender document, we would issue that tender document. We would normally allow suppliers 10 working days to respond. We get those tender documents back, we analyse them. We then would go back and cross-check with suppliers. If a price is too high or price is too low by a significant margin, it generally means something has been misunderstood. So you would cross-check those elements as well and cross-check any service levels. Once you've got all that information back, and this is what I'm suggesting you guys might want to do, we put a options report together, which in a condensed, summarized format starts at the top level and goes down into detail, explaining the pros and cons, pricing, benefits and savings from each of the suppliers or agencies we've tendered to. And we would discuss that with the client as to what they feel about that. The client may come back and they say, actually, I've got a very good relationship with supplier A. I know they're not the best saving, but I want to remain with them. That's fine. We would still implement that and make sure that supplier is held to account. They may say, I want to jump ship. You've got a 40% saving with somebody else, in which case we'd arrange supplier meetings for the client to cross-examine, speak to the supplier, let the supplier do a presentation. And after the end of all of that, it's the client's decision as to who they think they would want to move forward with. And then we would deal with that implementation in terms of phasing out the old supplier, bringing in the new supplier, get it up and running, and then we audit, as we said there, for that period of time. Is any of you guys going through a kind of a cost exercise at the moment at all? No one looking at costs? Okay. Right, I'm going to stop my slideshow there and stop sharing, because otherwise it becomes a little bit too salesy, I think, and I want to avoid that. So I'm going to come back to you, John.